Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today's guest is Robyn Goldenberg, a strategist, coach, and fractional CMO who helps founders scale with clarity, presence, and energy, not burnout. Robyn built and bootstrapped her own seven-figure brand and now guides leaders through both practical and human sides of growth. In this episode here today, we're going to talk about how to build systems that scale your business without scaling the stress. How energetic alignment becomes a leadership advantage, and what it really takes to stay present while driving growth. If you're a founder trying to balance momentum with meaning, then this conversation is going to be one you want to lean into. Robyn, welcome to the show.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Every moment tests you. Every action defines you. This is the prestigious initiative where mindset becomes muscle and character becomes legacy. I'm Chris Bean, martial artist, coach, and relentless believer in growth. If you're here to sharpen your edge, lead with integrity, and build a life that echoes beyond your years, you're home. You can find the podcast on social media at PrestigiouSPod. You can find me at Chris Bean Official, and the email for the podcast is prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com. Now, Robyn, why would somebody want to listen to our conversation here today?
Someone probably wants to listen to our conversation if they are a business owner, in what I like to call the messy middle. So business is working, but it is draining. We all know that as a business owner, there are some perks, but it also kind of sucks sometimes. And so if you're in this place where you're growing, you want to grow, and everything seems okay from the outside, but you don't feel okay, this is the episode for you.
Well, and you work with founders that, and you scale those seven-figure brands. What is the biggest type of distraction that you see between, biggest distinction you see between growth and a growth that feels aligned? So you have chaotic growth and you have growth that feels aligned. What is the biggest distinction you see between those two things?
So what I will say is that businesses, when they're starting, kind of thrive on chaos, right? On chaotic growth, because you just have to kind of go all into it. You just have to be there and embrace the chaos. But where we see the biggest issue for getting out of that chaos is that we as business owners, we really end up thriving on that chaos. It feels, I don't want to say nice, but it triggers your brain to feel like this is a dopamine hit, right? Like this feels great. I love the chaos. I'm going to embrace it. Everything. I should be doing everything. And the founders and owners that take that step back and say, no, wait, this isn't okay, because ultimately, like, is it feeding my brain? Yes. But is it going to burn me out long term? Absolutely. That's where we see the biggest distinction of being able to build a scaling business that doesn't kill you in the process.
And really, it sounds like part of that is being able to relinquish some of the control, some of the things that you're doing on a daily basis, because you think or you feel like you're the only one that's capable of doing those things, giving those to somebody on your team, or having a team, creating a team, developing a team to be able to do those things to kind of ease some of that chaoticness. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really hard. We're kind of control freaks, and it's easy to say, I can do it faster than training you to do it. Or they might not do it the right way, or the way that I do it now. It's really easy to default to that. But ultimately, you just kind of gotta trust and let it go and accept that people will do things differently than you do them, and they might do things wrong in the beginning, but it's okay. Everything's going to be okay.
And I think that we have to understand as the leader, as the owner, just because something is different doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different. And as long as there's a reason behind it and it works and it is okay for the customers, the clients, or whoever the end user is, then it's okay. And if you are the only one who is doing those things, then, well, two things. One, you don't need a team, and you're paying them to do nothing, to sit around. But on top of that, if you're the only ones that's capable of doing whatever the task is, then that is slowing your growth of the business down, because then you can't be freed up to do the other things that are more growth relevant to the business.
Yep. What I like to tell people is that we as business owners, we're the most expensive employee in our business,
Mm.
whether that's through like what you pay yourself or the perks that you take, like your car or your office or whatever that might be. Um, but we're the most expensive employee. Would you pay someone what you make hourly, if you break it down, to check your emails or to kind of do these little menial task works? In the beginning, sure, because you have to, that you just can't afford to even outsource, right? But as you grow, it's imperative that you shift that spend, right, of that employee, of you, to something that actually generates revenue, and doing little tasky stuff is not going to get you there.
Right. And I think then what that does too is that causes the leaders to take a look at, what does the system look like? Do I have a system? How much of the system can be delegated to other people? Because if I'm paying myself to do these things, that's not going to be the best for the business. So where at in the system can I start to deliver these to the team that I already have in place, and they're going to do this at their pay base, so that I don't have to do it at my pay base, and that's not beneficial to the business or to us, growth or us as it relates to growth moving forward.
Yep. So what I like to do with my clients is say, okay, let's look at how you spend your week. And I want you to be able to set aside 2 hours a week to work on your business, not in it, but on it. Revenue generating growth activities, strategic activities, whatever that might be. How do we shift what's in your calendar now so that you can block out that time comfortably? And then the other thing is, once we sort of catalog, okay, what do you do in a week? Even if we have to start with a day, track what you do for the day. It's to say, how many times do you do this task? If you do this task more than twice a week, we should automate it or figure out how to document it so we can pass it on to someone else, right? If it's a one-off thing where you have to go to the bank or you have to do these things, totally understand. But if it's something like documenting client processes or things like that, some internal operational process, you don't have to do that. And you actually might find that you're not the best person to do that. You're just the most comfortable doing that.
Right. And you're probably often not the best person to do that. You're just the most
That
comfortable
is
doing
true.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, for yourself, after building and bootstrapping your own brand, what is the moment that you realized that systems, not hustle, was the real leverage point?
Yeah. So I'm a mom of three. And so when you talk about kind of operating on chaos, that is just parent life, right? Sometimes we just operate on chaos. And what I realized was that I needed to really be available for my kids whenever they needed me. Without my business failing, I run a 30-year-old legacy business and I have my own business. And I can't have the business sitting on me. And I have people that I pay to run operations. And so every time that I do their tasks, I am double paying to get that done. But it also takes me away from being with my kids or going to the gym or doing things that feed me in order to make my business stronger. And what I found was that I was spending so much time trying to juggle everything and keep it all together and appear normal and controlled and not upset about things. And my moods were all over the place. I was losing patience on things that I wouldn't normally. And I had to kind of take a look and say, okay, this isn't working. This isn't sustainable for long term. I'm sacrificing. I'm big on going to the gym. I think it really just helps me mentally, and it helps me grow my business and be more strategic. I was sacrificing my time, my gym time, or like going to do activities after school with my kids because I had to do stuff in the office or in my business. And my partner also owns a business. And he said, we can't run like this. Our business doesn't run us, we run it, and we have to make a change.
All right. Now, bring me in. What were some of the first steps that you did in order to start to build those systems, that process, in order to kind of pull you out to kind of ease a little bit of the chaos and the overbearingness that was happening?
Well, so I have an assistant. Her name is Anna. She's the best. And the first thing I did was say, I don't want to check my emails. because I get to my office and I probably spend an hour looking through my inbox. I don't need to do that. That's silly. Half of that is garbage anyway. And so what Anna does is go through, she deletes anything that I don't need to look at, and she flags anything that I might need to see, and she takes a note of anything that might be client related. So something that like really does need my touch point. So that was kind of the easiest first step because ultimately like there's really low risk in handing that off. And then I started to look at, okay, what touches the clients? So what would have the biggest impact if it didn't happen? If I was the bottleneck, which we end up being the bottleneck in a lot of things as business owners, but as the bottleneck, I could end up harming a client, not harming, but sacrificing work product, right, to a client. And so what systems can we put in place? What do we do over and over and over and over again for that client? And how do we systematize it so that someone else can do it? So we did that. And we rework that, I look at it every month or so and I say, okay, it looks like maybe we need to add another touch point, whatever that might be. And so I started picking things that felt like I was the holdup because ultimately, again, like I have a team and I pay these people, I trust them to do their job. They can do more. And so we just started to pick out little things. And then my final step, which I'm still working on, admittedly, is I did sort of this time audit that I was just talking about. So how do I spend my day? How do I spend my week? And then where do I want to spend my hours, right? Is it, okay, well, I need, 2 hours on Monday and 2 hours on Friday for gym time. And I need a Wednesday block of time to work on strategy for my business, whatever that might be, right? So I started then with like, how do I fit these in? And then what do I need to remove? Because ultimately, typically with business owners, what we need to do is just let it go. Take things out of your schedule.
Well, I think that having the time audit as the starting point is likely very helpful for anybody that's listening, because you take a look at the time of the time that you're spending, the time that you're devoting to all of these kind of medial type of tasks that are easy to delegate to somebody else. Like there's not very much that's at stake by delegating your emails. There's not very much at stake by delegating this to somebody else. So you do this and you do like a trial run. Okay, let me give this off. Let's see what happens. Okay, great. Let's do this. And having that time audit as the standard, as the base to shoot from, okay, I'm spending a lot of time checking my emails. I'm spending a lot of time, and okay, these are the tasks that I need to get done that only I can do. These are the tasks that need to get done that really anybody on the team could do. Who's best suited at this? Okay, and you start to pass those off. And I think that having an opportunity to look at your team in connection with your time audit, in connection with the tasks that need to get done, and you look at it through a lens like that, then creating the systems become pretty easy. Now, with those systems, you have to have a protocol, like a standard operating procedure for how to do email checking, for how to contact the clients, and all of these other things. And maybe you are the person, the owner, the person who is the main business person, is the person who starts and does that very first initial standard operating procedure. Then you give it to your team. Great. They do it for a little bit, 6 months, 3 months, maybe it's only even a month. Okay, listen, hey, I know you've been working on this system for this area for a month now. I want to know, how are you doing it? Because you're doing it so much more effective than I am. Can you bring me in? Tell me how you're doing it. And then you have them write the SOP that anybody else can follow, which is I think the standard, the smartest way to do that.
Yep. I think as the owners or the person that kind of started that SOP, right? We see things a certain way. I've always done it this way, so this is how I'm going to do it. But ultimately, to your point, like maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe it's not the most efficient. Maybe I'm missing things because it's so autopilot to me that I didn't document it because I was like, yeah, then I do this and I skip that part. And so when I went on a maternity leave the first time, I had to document something like payroll. Like, how do we do payroll? And I documented how I would do payroll, and then I immediately handed it off. I said, okay, Linda on my team, I said, the next payroll cycle, I need you to do payroll. and then follow my process. And I want you to make notes as to where I've missed things, and I want you to fill it in. And so we worked very collaborative, and we did this with a couple other things, but we worked collaboratively essentially to document these processes. And now I don't do payroll at all. And that was years ago. But she really built that, but it's because I just like let it go, right? I was like, oh, well, payroll got done and people got paid. So ultimately it worked. So I think just having trust. And what I will say is if you don't have a team, which it happens, or you can't afford a full-time person, there are options out there, outsourcing, whatever that might be, to get the help you need, even if it's part-time, and is also a good entry into kind of like giving some things up. What I will also add is that the mental load on business owners is incredibly high. And we love to be the firefighters, like the emergency response team. And that is incredibly draining, but it also feels good. And so we kind of battle with that. But if you train your team, this is what I do. I train my team. If you have a problem, come to me with a solution. Even if it's wrong, I don't care. But you've put in the effort to use your brain to start thinking through problems, then I don't have to immediately give an answer. There is a lot of training with that on both sides, right? So I have to not jump in right away and say, here's the answer. I've solved your problem. And I have to be willing to accept that like they might not have the right answer, or more than likely it's not the answer that I would have thought of. And so instead of immediately being like, no, that's terrible, I have to be like, okay, walk me through how you got there. And they have to be open and receptive. I think that's pretty hard, is to not jump in. But then you need to just trust your team, because ultimately they need to carry some of that mental load too. And it'll be better for everyone because they'll start to feel like you trust them to make real decisions.
Well, and what that does too is that gives them a little bit of ownership over it. And moreover than that, it gives them ownership of it. But because they found what the problem was, and they're in that area all the time, every day, because they found what the problem was, they're probably going to have a different type of solution than what the founder would think of, because the founder isn't doing that job, that task, that interaction with the client or whatever that thing is on a daily basis. And I know one thing for a company that I worked for previously was their big thing was not to come with problem, but to say, I have an opportunity to better service the customer or the client. And what that does is that takes that negativity of the word problem out. And because you have a better opportunity to service the client, then the solution is the natural next step. Hey, I see we have an area where we can better service the client. Here's how I think we can do that. And that whole conversation, the way that changes that dynamic really shifts. And because you are now the environment of the company has to be suited to have this type of conversation. But if you can have that type of conversation like that changes the dynamics of that conversation, and it makes it very simple, very easy, very natural for the solution-oriented issue to come right out, right? I don't have a problem. I have an opportunity to better service the client or the customer. Then you come up with whatever that is. That's a natural best thing. And that really was foundational for me, because then if you are that type of person that sees solutions all of the time, you're going to be so much more valued in the company.
Yep.
Because if you're the problem pointer outer, hey, there's a problem there, there's a problem there, there's a problem there, you're going to quickly find, that's valuable to a certain extent if your company can do something about that. But otherwise, you're just a negative person, you get kind of pushed aside. But if you say, hey, listen, I have a better opportunity to service our client right here. This is how. And if you're in it all the time, you're going to have a really creative or useful or dynamic way to solve whatever that issue is right off the bat. So that was a difference in phrasing that I've used in the past that really clarifies that for the whole team.
Yeah. I also like to create kind of a culture of learning, which probably sounds not real. Like people say that, and I know that, but, and do we fail? Absolutely. Do we make mistakes? We're human. Everyone makes mistakes. But when we come back together, I want to talk about, okay, let's identify where we went wrong, but what can we do kind of going forward? So if this happens again, even if it's like some crazy situation that we could never predict, well, it happened, right? And so let's talk through if we run into scenarios like this again, what what can we do better next time? What do we learn from this? And it could be like, well, we learned that we can really like jump into action at any moment. That's a great learning lesson. Um, Even if it doesn't have a tangible like solution attached to it. But it gets everyone on this page of like, okay, well, we messed up or something, we couldn't predict that something happened, but it's okay. I'm not going to dwell in the negative. I'm not going to shut down, which I think a lot of people, analytics, people like that tend to be like, oh, my data, I didn't predict this in my data and my spreadsheets. Now I can't function, which happens. Or like the people that are really like emotionally connected and bonded to the company, they might take it really hard. And so instead of getting them kind of like down in the dumps, we've got to transition as leaders to say like, hey, things happen. Like this is a business. Like this is a living being. Things happen. We just have to keep forward momentum. Learn and move. Learn and move.
Well, and I think a key tenet to learning is failure. If you can fail at
Mhm.
something and understand that failure as an opportunity to learn what not to do, to bring that back to Thomas Edison, to opportunity to learn what not to do. If you have that type of relationship with failure, then you don't see failure as a negative. You see failure as a positive because, hey, listen, that didn't work that time. That's okay. Let's pivot. Let's try this time. And you do all these
Yep.
kind of iterative tests to find out what works and what doesn't work. And if you do it correctly and you have a little bit of a system that's involved in this, not only do you get to learn what happened, what didn't, what worked and what doesn't work, but then you can learn from the process. And then moving forward, well, we're going to try this new foray into this new area. But I have all of this data that I've collected on the things that didn't work, that probably are not going to work. So we're not going to do any of those. But I have all of this data on the other side that says, yeah, these things work. These are tried and true. This is the system. Okay, then you start from there. And of course, not all of those are going to work in whatever the area is because that's how life works. But you can start from a positive side as opposed to a negative side and have to relearn the whole process, as long as you are tracking at least a little bit of the iterative test, that kind of game that you play of what worked and what doesn't work or what didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I know that work-life balance is kind of like the hot topic that people talk about nowadays. You have a different take on that. You have energy alignment. And I guess, can you bring the listeners in, let them know how does that differ and why does it matter?
Yeah. So if you have seen in the future, you might hear me or you might have seen or whatever, that I tend to say that work-life balance is kind of a myth. I say BS, obviously I say the whole word, but it's kind of a myth because ultimately, especially as a business owner, your work is your life. It just is. And so what you need to do is make sure that the activities that you're doing align with what you want to do, with how you like who you are, instead of trying to work against it. It's very different when you're an employee and you clock in and you clock out and then you leave work and you're not in work anymore, right? But as business owners, most of the time, it's very hard to do that. And so there are times, certainly, like I don't bring my laptop home. I have kind of some boundaries on aligning myself correctly. But it comes down to kind of my non-negotiables. So I try not to check my emails at night. I try not to do any work from my bed. That is like my number one. So like when I wake up in the morning or my kids wake me up in the morning, I'm not immediately checking my phone. And if a client needs something late at night, unless their whole business is on fire, it has to wait till tomorrow. So we just kind of set some boundaries, right? And then I set personal boundaries. Okay, I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. That's my time, right? Or I am a nutrition coach. So my meals are important to me, whatever, right? My kid time is important to me. So it's creating a business that aligns with your boundaries, and being okay with like you can have boundaries from your business. You don't have to be in like a toxic relationship with your business. And ultimately what I tell people, especially millennial business owners, is that you don't have to suffer in this business. You don't. I understand that older generations of business owners, they just, you put in the work, you do the hours, you don't have any balance, your work is your life, and that's kind of the thing. Um, but it doesn't have to be that way. We have other identifiers. You are not your business is not you. And so being able to decide, okay, do I even like this business? Okay, if you don't like it, if you don't like what you do, it's time to think about, how do I align this business better to what I like? Or how do I find something else? Right. But you have to be honest with yourself. And it's okay to be like, man, I really don't even like to be here. And let me preface or add that, like, you might have days where you don't like what you do. I joke all the time, like, that Starbucks starting wage is like $17 an hour. And so sometimes I'm like, well, today sucked and I could just go work at Starbucks and have no responsibilities. But that's not why we did this. So you just have to have some breathing room. And that's what energy alignment and boundaries put in place, is a way for you to really reflect on, am I aligned where I want to go? Is this business going to take me there? And if not, it's okay to admit that, like, this isn't the right direction.
And I think that, like, doing a time audit was the first step to creating those systems. I think probably the first step for this is to create a list of core values, for lack of a better phrasing, the outcomes
Mm-hmm.
that you want to achieve from running a business or from putting in the work at whatever the place is, because then you can properly align yourself. Because if you don't know what those things are, then they're vague, they're ill-formed, you don't have anything tangible for that. But if you have a list, and maybe more of a list, it's a hierarchy, a list that has hierarchy to it. So you have the most important thing is first, and then on down. Then what you can do is you can make sure that you are fulfilling on those outcomes, those things that you really want to have out of the business as you go to business. And what that can do is that can be a self-fulfilling type of job then, and job environment even. Because if you have a list of those outcomes, the things that you want to achieve through the business, then you can make sure and strategically align the business with those values. You have the boundaries in place to make sure that you're not doing work past X time, that you have family time, that you have, when you go to work, you feel energized and you get something from it, or it's helping the people, whatever the things are for you. But having that list, that hierarchical list that says, okay, this is first, this is second, so on. And then you just create the system for the job, for the business to fall in line with what your values are. And you could do that whether you're the CEO of the company or you're a Starbucks employee, right? Now,
Yep.
probably the Starbucks employee are going to have a few things that are probably on their list as non-negotiables that you're going to have to be negotiable on, because you're working at Starbucks and you're not owning a Starbucks. Those are different. I think everybody understands that. But if you have that list, then you can find a job, or you can create a job, or you can create a business that aligns with that list of outcomes. And I think outcomes would be the right term for what that is, because those are the outcomes. These are the outcomes-based events that I want to have happen based on my work. And I think that work-life balance, for me, work-life balance was broken when I had a guest, in fact, ask me, listen, if you're at work and you think you have really good work-life balance and your mom calls, your grandma calls, your dad calls, kids, whatever, are you going to answer that phone call, or are you going to let it go to voicemail? Well, I'm going to answer the phone call, because if they're calling me at work, something, my kid's school's calling me, something's going on.
Yep.
Then I don't have work-life balance. And that means a work-life balance is not something that people can have. So I think that really was the breakdown for me. Like, okay, then, like, going from one way to the next, that's how people think of it. They want to have home life balance, not work-life balance. And then you switch it around. Okay, well, if I have something happen at home outside of work that I need to take care of at work, like my kid's school calls, yeah, I'm going to answer the phone. Okay, then work-life balance isn't, it's not something really that exists. And especially as the founder of the business, your relationship with the business is so much different than what it's like if you are just just an employee.
Yep. I would agree. What I like to do with my clients is we do essentially a 5-year plan, but I tend to phrase it as like a bucket list. And so we look at, okay, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I think it's hard sometimes to imagine 5 years down the road. I know this is like a hot topic interview question, which I always find crazy for like regular employees. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? They don't know. I don't know. But if you can work with someone to kind of document, okay, in 5 years, I personally want this. Maybe it's like, I want my business to still make money, but I don't want to be in the day to day, right? I want to be able to go on vacation for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, or whatever that might be, right? So we start to set these kind of personal goals that are for business owners, usually weave in and out of business goals. And then we start to talk about, okay, well, how do we actually start to accomplish these things? Which ones are priority this year, right? Okay, so you want to be able to go on a month-long vacation without checking into your business. That's your ultimate goal. Okay, so this year you need to take a long weekend and without your phone, whatever that might be, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we're going to do that a couple times. Or maybe it's like this random Wednesday, you're just going to leave. Like, you're going to clear your calendar. You're not going to be at your business. Your employees can't get a hold of you. We're going to stress test it. We're going to see what happens. But we start to work on these big goals in micro sprints so that you can build trust. Like, oh, well, I could get away for that Wednesday and no one even noticed that I was gone. Now I could take Thursday, Friday through the weekend and the business won't implode, right? Then I could build up to more days. Then I could build up to this, or maybe I could only work half days, right? Or you start to see like, okay, well, I left Wednesday and these things broke down. Okay, well, do you need to do those things? No, right? Maybe there's something on there. We could just shift the day that happens. But maybe just more training is needed. But it helps, I think, to connect kind of your personal goals as a business owner back to your business goals. Again, this alignment thing, so that both you and the business are moving in the same direction. You're not butting heads and fighting each other.
Well, I think I really like that idea. And to me, what I like about that most is that kind of opportunity to treat that as a game, as a playful way to experiment. I think experimenting is akin to play, especially as it relates to this. But you can do that small test. Okay, listen, I'm going to leave on Wednesday. Listen, I'm not going to be on Wednesday. You guys aren't going to be able to contact me. Good luck. I'll talk to you on Thursday. Bye. And then you see what happens. And then what that does is that gives you insight on a couple things. Number one, is that possible to do? Can I make that a longer thing? Can I make it Wednesday and Thursday? Can I make it, a whole week? But then the impact that you get out of that is you get to see some data there. Okay, how did my team do? Who stepped up? Who fulfilled on the task or job or role that I would have otherwise done? And then the other side of that is, okay, who needs some more training? What are the things that didn't get done? What are the things that didn't get done that nobody knows didn't get done? Because you're going to go back and you're like, hey, sorry, boss, we missed this, we missed this, we missed this. And then as the boss, you're going to know, okay, yeah, well, you also missed this, this, and this, and you didn't even know that you missed that. So having that type of data then gives you insight. Okay, these are the areas that I need to best train my team. Those are the systems, those are the protocols that I need to make, or the opportunity to delegate those things to other people that are actually in charge of those things. Then you can, okay, let's do those things. Let's train these people up. Great. Let's run the test again. This time, listen, guys, hey, I'm going to be gone on Monday. Bye. You're not going to be able to contact me unless, in lieu of the place burning down, then you should call the authorities. Don't call me anyways. I'll see you on Tuesday. Then you run the test again and you do that on a Monday. Then that means it's a long weekend. So whatever, Mondays generally are a little bit different than a Wednesday, probably, just because the weekend is there. So, okay, then you get another insight. All right, where's the downfall? And you just play that game over and over again. And through playing that game, running those experiments, then you get really good insight, really good data on who is stepping up, who are fulfilling on the task, roles, or responsibility that need to be fulfilled on. Where are the issues? What needs to be fulfilled? What needs to be filled? Then you can create a work environment where you are truly working yourself out of a job. And I think working yourself out of a job, you mentioned that hot interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I think the best answers to that, if I have somebody ask me that, is I see myself in your position. right?
Yep.
You take the ownership to say, listen, I want your job. And that really kind of that gives them an opportunity to kind of double take. Whoa, okay, this guy's a little serious. He wants my job. Anyways, that's my kind of offhanded way to answer that question. But anyways,
Yeah. The other thing that I see is that some really interesting reflection on your home life tends to happen when you step away from your business. And I had a client who, his wife was actually like, you're going to need to find a hobby if you're going to be home for days at a time at this point, because obviously it's not sustainable to continually go on vacations. And so I think it starts to really push on the business owner to say, like, who am I outside of my business? Because a lot of us have spent so much time building this business and really identifying as the business. You know, when you ask business owners, well, what do you do? Almost all of them will say, I own a business. They almost never say, oh, I do remote staffing or I am an outsourced CMO, right? They tend to just say, I am an entrepreneur, I own a business, or I own multiple businesses. And so it gives you this opportunity to detach a little bit and set those boundaries and say, okay, well, maybe I really want to learn how to play pickleball, or my goal this year is to read a book a month, whatever that might be, right? And so it gives you kind of yourself back.
well, and it changes the identity of you as well. And it, like you said, if your identity is the business, then where do you end and where does the business begin? And if that's a little confusing or muddled, then you have an identity problem that you probably need to solve. And it can be solved pretty easily with the way that you phrase things, the way that you think about things. And that can be the subtle shift that is needed in order for that to happen. Now, where do you find that most founders sabotage their energy or their presence without even realizing it?
That's a really good question. I find that they're mostly sabotaging themselves without knowing, because they can't stop meddling in their business.
Mm.
So I'll give you a good client example. So I had a client, he built a really impressive business. He goes away for like half the year. He's from Morocco. He goes away half the year. And he would go away. His team would run the business fine, right? Business is growing, everything's working. He comes back and meddles. He's better now, but this was a couple of years ago. And because we feed on this, like, well, you must need me. This is boring. This business is boring now because it doesn't need me to constantly fight fires. And so we end up with our team actually functioning really well, right? They're productive. The business is doing what it's supposed to be doing without you. This is exactly what you want. But it is so boring because you're not feeding your brain at that point, right? It's not exciting. And so this is where it's really critical to like just go away, right? Just go find a hobby. This guy took up skydiving. Jokingly, I was like, go take up skydiving or something and get out of this business and let your team do what they're doing. And he was like, okay, I'll go take up. And he literally did start skydiving and he loves it. Because we need that adrenaline rush. And the business gives you that until it doesn't. And you've got to go find something else to do. And if you find that like when you come back from breaks, your team is like, oh my God, not this guy again. That's probably your sign that like everything was fine until I came back. And then I started to notice that all these little things that don't matter were wrong. That's probably a sign there that you should go find something else to do, even if that's acquire another business, right? Or to go help someone else in their own business. I had a client that his ultimate goal was to be an angel investor in small businesses. And that's a really good use of your energy if you love to be in a business. And it gives you that excitement of a startup, but it's not sacrificing your revenue.
Right. And I guess sometimes business owners, the founders, they think they've built their team up to a certain point. They're able to walk away or step away, maybe not walk away, but to step away, at least for time. Then they come back and check in. They do this bouncing back and forth business. Then whatever the reason that they stepped away from, they walked away from their life, or they want to spend time with their kids, or whatever that thing is, changes. Then they think to themselves, okay, now I need to work myself back into the business. And then there's tension there, because the business is running the way that it's supposed to run. It's fulfilling on all the things it's supposed to fulfill, and it's successful by all stretches. The founder feels like because their identity is tied to it, they feel like they need to reattach themselves to the business somehow. Then they have to figure out, okay, how do I reattach myself? How do I reinsert myself into my own business? And that's a tough thing, because if the business is doing all the things it's supposed to be doing, by all intents and purposes, they don't need the founder. Now, the founder can be there for board meetings or to help to, maybe point out the next direction the company should go into. But really, the employees, the people that are there day in, day out doing the work of the business, they are in charge of steering the ship. And then the founder is up on the crow's necks pointing the direction to go to. As long as that type of relationship is there, and they understand their role in their own business as such, then they don't need to reinsert themselves into the business. Like you said, they can go take up a hobby, touch them with the business. Hey, how's everything going? Okay, yep, great. Yeah, just any questions? No? All right. Hey, you guys are going swimmingly? Wonderful. I'll touch back in a month and see how everything is. Now, probably it's not like that for every business, but I think that's the end goal. That's the ultimate hopeful end goal for the founder, where they can step out of their business for long enough that the business is able to operate without them and be able to be successful without them. They can touch back. They say, hey, yeah, how's it going? Da, da, da. Okay, great. Bye. See ya. And they go do their own thing. But finding their own thing is challenging, because, like you said, their identity, who they are, is directly connected to that business. And it's like they don't know any other way without, but they need to find a way to separate that in order for them to be themselves, separate from that business that they founded.
Yeah, we see this a lot in business owners that are getting to that age to exit their business, whether that's through just straight retirement or selling, or even stepping out so that, the next generation can come up, is that they really don't have anything. I don't want to say anything. They usually have a family and stuff like that, but they don't have other things except their business. Their friends came through their business. They go to trade shows or whatever, right? It's just become who they are. And so it becomes really hard for them to exit. And unfortunately, ultimately you're going to exit your business either way, standing up or laying down, as we like to say. But you should do it in a way that, like, this is your retirement, right? Your business. As a business owner, this is our retirement. We might have a 401k from an old job we had or something like that, but typically we don't plan for retirement. And so the earlier you can start thinking about exit, so I'm 37, right? I'm not planning on exiting my business in the next couple of years, but I'm already thinking about, okay, well, in 10 years or whatever that might be, I don't want to be in my business really 5 years. So what am I going to do? Like, what else can I be doing? How do I structure my business so that it's not sitting on me, so that when the time comes, we're ready. We're just ready, right? I'm emotionally ready. I'm physically ready. My business is ready. And as you're building your business, you really want to be thinking towards exit, even if you're exiting at 40. And you're just going to go like live on a cruise ship for the rest of your, I don't know, whatever you want to do. Right. But you need to be thinking about, like, this business is not your whole life. It could exist your whole life, but it shouldn't rely on you for your whole life.
Now, what are some common myths that founders tell themselves about productivity that is actually costing them presence?
Um, I think my favorite one is that you chose this life, so you should just deal with it, right? When we talk about, oh my gosh, I never get to shut off, which is true. I'm a business owner. You're always thinking about your business, even if you try to put in boundaries. I'm guilty of that too. It just is. Um, but what you find is people who don't own businesses will say, well, you decided to do this. This is your fault. They may not phrase it the way, but that's essentially what they mean. Or, well, you get to set your own hours. It's so great. I love that one. Yeah, all of them. And so I think it's you build this dependency on, maybe dependency is not the right word. You build up this emotional feeling of like, maybe it's guilt, right? Like, well, this does suck and it's really hard, but I did it to myself, so I deserve it. And I think the other part that is kind of a myth is you see these stories of like tech startups, right? These unicorns. Most businesses don't boom like that. They just don't. That's a very one-off situation fueled by venture capital, usually, right? They got a lot of cash coming in. It's these young guys usually who just like, they have no consequences. They have money and they're willing to go do that. But most businesses don't start that way. And so trying to compare yourself to maybe like this hot tech startup that grew to $1 bajillion in the first year, that's not realistic and it's not sustainable. Most of those guys burn out after 1 year and they've sold their, they sell their company. But building a long-term sustainable business doesn't work in big booms. It works in boring small moves. And so you just have to accept that it's okay. Like business isn't exciting. That sounds bad, but it's the truth. This is your job, right? Is to be kind of a sustainer, a maintainer, right? We're just working through process. Yes, I love what I do. You can love the thing you do. But it doesn't have to grow like crazy just because you see it in the news.
Well, and I think that oftentimes we think success is exciting, but really success is boring. Because if you're at the top of the field of wherever it is, you had to do all of the boring, monotonous day in and day out malarkey, whatever that thing is, in order to make it to the other end. Like you think about like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan probably is one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball players we've ever had. He had to endure hours and hours and hours of boring practices. He stood in the free throw line and shot after shot after shot after shot for hours. Came back the next day, same thing. Came back the next day. So you look at any top performer in any industry, whether it's sports, whether it's business, finance, whatever that thing is, those people had to do the work day in and day out, the boring malarkey every day in order to get to where they are. And if it was easy, if it was exciting every step of the way, there'd be so many more high performers. But we know that that's not the case. In order to get to be a high performer, we have to go through the boring stuff in order to get to the other side. So if you're listening to this and you think that success is exciting and eventful, it's not. I mean, maybe at some point it gives you opportunity to do some things that you wouldn't have otherwise done. But you have to be the type of person who is willing to put in the hours of the boring stuff over and over again in order to make it to have a few of those nice things that you think might happen all the time.
Yeah, what I tell people is you've got to do your reps, right? And you've got to eat your vegetables. There are things in business that you just have to do. And much like a regular job, right? Like there are aspects of your regular job that are boring. You just have to do them because it's part of the process. It's the same in business. But I will also add that like the definition of success is very personal. So what I feel is successful to me may not be success to you. Some people might view success as like being a multimillionaire. Great. Some people might view success as, hey, I get to go on a 2-week vacation every year with my family and I get to spend time with my kids and go to the soccer games or whatever, right? And so you need, as a business owner, to identify what success is for you and don't let other people warp what success means because everyone sees it differently. And don't let people on the outside who don't own businesses warp your sense of success. because they have there's this perceived idea that the only success is monetary or huge revenue or something, to your point, very exciting and flashy and wonderful. And if that's your view of success, it is what it is. But don't let other people's views change how you feel about your business and where you are.
Now, what is a practical something that a listener could implement today that would change energy or alignment and have a outlasting or overlasting impact on their day to day? So practical
Yeah.
alignment for energy or habit that would have such a big impact for them.
Yeah. So what I would say is either do that time audit, really audit your time. You can do that, in a day or couple days. It's really simple. I'm happy to obviously share a spreadsheet. That's a really quick, tangible takeaway, is to identify where you could delegate. But from a personal standpoint, what I find is really helpful is to set a routine, one routine for the day. So maybe it's your morning routine. I have a very specific morning routine that involves, like, the coffee goes off at a certain time. I do these things with my kids. We make breakfast, whatever it is, and set that boundary, right? So maybe it's on Wednesday nights, I go to this class, this pottery class. I don't know. Whatever your thing is, set the boundary and make it a routine. And your brain, even though it feels weird to set boundaries for yourself, your brain will use that and it'll give you kind of a break. And we ultimately thrive on setting routines. And so if you could just pick one for the week, that'll get you going.
Well, I like to think about that. Like, so sometimes you get pushback, like you said, about routines. I like to think about the routine as a guardrail that keeps me on track to do the things that I want to do. And that routine, those non-negotiables, sometimes you butt up against those, and from time to time that's okay. But as long as you butt up against them and don't break through them, you stay on path, stay on routine, then you're fine. And inevitably, if you do fall off path, you probably should have a way to think about what it looks like to get back onto a path, onto the routine. And having that routine as a staple sometimes is really easy to say, oh man, I recognize I broke through those guardrails. I'm not hitting the marks I'm supposed to hit. When was I doing this most? Oh, I was doing this routine. Okay, great. Let's jump back to that routine. And it's going to be some friction. It's going to be hard to do, especially at the beginning. Once you fall back into that routine, you can stay within those guardrails that keeps you on track to make it to that next goal for yourself.
I will say that I have ADHD, so I make everything as visual as I can. So on the cabinet above where my coffee maker is, I have like 4 or 5 Post-its. One is like 16 ounces of water before you have a cup of coffee, 30 grams of protein with your breakfast, whatever it is, right? So I have kind of these non-negotiables to me. I can see them every day. And without those Post-its, my morning is to hell. And so it really does give me these like visual cues, and like people might think it's crazy, but it does help your brain kind of like continue to build that routine.
Well, the other thing too is it cuts down on the amount of decisions that you have to make on a given day, because then you don't have to think about those things. You fall back on the routine, and it's not like, man, what Steve Jobs famously only wore turtlenecks and the blue jeans. That was one decision every day that he didn't have to make that freed up the mental capacity to make whatever other decisions that he had, because that one decision was always made. He had a routine that set, very iconic uniform for himself. That was one decision he didn't have to make, because if he gets up, he wears this outfit because that's what he wears. That's his uniform. Then he moves on for the rest of the day. So having those sticky notes there is a good visual reminder for yourself that you don't have to make those decisions. They're already there for you. You made it once, then you just have to fulfill on those things continually.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Listen, hey, Robyn, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Through this conversation, you helped to remind us that real scale isn't built on just activity alone. It's built on clarity, systems, and that energetic alignment that we talked about. We touched on how founders confuse busy with progress, why systems free up that mental capacity for high-level thinking that you're going to need later on, and how intentional energy allocation helps leaders to stay present in work and at home. And, Robyn, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways for the listeners? And, if they wanted to get into contact with you and learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think my final kind of note to the listeners is that business ownership is hard. It just is. It just depends on how hard you want to make it for yourself. And there are people who will never understand the suck that comes with owning a business. And they will also never understand the amazing things that you can do as when you own your own business, right? And so just keep working. Try to block out people that are giving you nonsense, right? And just focus on yourself, focus on your business, and, find some boundaries, and it's going to be okay. And there are people like us out there that love to talk to business owners, are business owners, and we're here to build a community and support people. And if you want to talk to me, I love talking to other business owners. You can find me on LinkedIn, Robyn Goldenberg. I'm sure my links will be here, but you can also shoot me an email, Robyn, ROBYN @strategyleaders.com. Anna checks my emails, but she flags anyone that wants to talk to me, and I do make it a habit to follow up with everyone.
Wonderful. And like I said, I'll put those links in the show notes. So listeners, if you want to check out Robyn, you can do that. And listeners, if this episode shifted the way that you think about growth, share it with somebody, a founder, a friend, and be sure to subscribe and visit theprestigiousLabs.com for more content that helps you lead with presence and purpose. Keep building, stay aligned, and lead with your energy intact.